Then quickly moving to Nathaniel Hawthorne, a very significant figure in American literature. The most iconic novel of Nathaniel Hawthorne is The Scarlet Letter. I don't know if it's in the syllabus or not, but Scarlet Letter is one of those books that everybody reads, okay? Just like Wuthering Heights or Pride and Prejudice or Crime and Punishment, Anna Karenina, Madame Bovary, 1001 Nights, okay? So everybody knows about these things. So he was born in Salem in Massachusetts, not to be confused with Salem in Tamil Nadu, okay? Salem, Massachusetts. Puritan forefathers, he's a Puritan, and his family were governors, they were magistrates in Massachusetts, and his ancestors were Puritan ancestors who were involved in the witch trials of Salem. Salem witch trials are very infamous. Many women were hanged on the charges of their being witches. So Hawthorne had that past in his mind when he wrote about the colony, Massachusetts, Salem, a Puritan worldview, a Puritan landscape in The Scarlet Letter. Now, Hawthorne was undoubtedly a moralist. Can anyone read this for me so that others can focus on this? Those who have not read today, please.
Nathaniel Hawthorne, Salem, Massachusetts. Puritan transcendentalist. Sir, can you tell what it is? Puritan?
Transcendentalist.
Transcendentalist.
Right.
Puritan ancestors, which trails?
Trials. Which trial? Trail and trial. Trail is a path. Trial is a, is trying somebody, right? Okay.
Okay, sir. Hawthorne was undoubtedly a moralist, concerned in particular with the moral errors of egotism and pride. A moralist who was acutely aware of just how complex the human character and human relations. Judgment does not, in any event, preclude imaginative understanding, even sympathy. In Hawthorne, allegory passed into symbolism. An object or event assumed multiple possible significance rather than correspondence with one divinely ordained idea. He was interested in the truth of the human heart. Preface to the House of the Seven
Gables. Yeah, thank you. Now, gable is the front part of the house. When you have, two rafters like this, the front part is called the gable. Okay. Though that architecture is no longer used now because we have concrete apartments and concrete buildings. Now, one thing that you need to remember while reading this story is he was a moralist. Okay. And he was focusing on moral errors of egotism and pride. These are the two important, aspects of human nature. Egotism is a self-centeredness, and always talking about yourself is egotistic. You are filled with yourself. Self-centeredness and pride. Pride also is one of the sins, right? One of the cardinal sins, according to the Christian traditions, the cardinal vices, the cardinal virtues, pride. So the moral errors of egotism and pride is something that Hawthorne deals with in his novel. He has written extensively. So Hawthorne is, a very prolific writer who wrote many. But though he was a moralist, A moralist, not in the sense of, saying this is black, this is white, you're good, you're bad, not that kind of a moralist. But he was aware of complexity of human character and human relations. Okay? And judgment does not in any event preclude imaginative understanding, even sympathy. Now, in his portrayal of human errors, Hawthorne is not without sympathy or an imaginative understanding. What do you mean by imaginative understanding? Why would have the characters acted the way they acted? Why somebody would have done what he or she has done? Is somebody automatically a sinner? Can we condemn automatically somebody as of no character? See, dear friends, it's no secret that all of us are very happy when something bad is said about others. Yes or no? Most of the time. Okay.
Yes, sir.
When somebody is saying good about somebody, it becomes unbearable. Oh, kya yaar, bore kar rahe. Okay, talking so. But when you say that, do you know something? Do you know about him or do you know about her? The other day I saw her or him. Then your ears are tingled. Okay, your ears begin to itch. This is the human condition. Are you able to understand? That's why St. Paul talks about the itching ears. Okay. Now your ears itch to hear gossip. Okay. To hear gossip and what happens in the office, who is okay, who has an affair with whom, who is, what is one's son doing or daughter doing, all this. So people are cruel. People are cruel when they look at other lives, forgetting their own lives. Are you able to understand that? So the good Lord tells his disciples that, look not for look at your own mote in your own eye. You are looking for a speck in another's eye. Something is small, but there is something bigger in your own mind. So he writes with a sympathy. When he talks about this character, okay, he writes with a sympathy. Why would he have behaved the way? Okay. And now in Hawthorne, allegory passed into symbolism, meaning in an allegory, there is one level of meaning and there is another immediately recognizable level of meaning. It is very confirmed. Now, whereas in a symbolism, the symbolism, okay, gives multiple possibilities of signification, meaning one can stand for many. It's not something that is very, very automatic, very, very rigid and given. It's always so fluid. So he was interested in the truth of the human heart. Truth of the human heart. What is the truth of the human heart? Can anyone know the truth of the human heart? But we can make an attempt, right? So Hawthorne remains a very, very important writer because of his engagement with this truth of the human heart. This is what he wrote in his preface to The House of Seven Gables. Now, he was friends with another important American, very popular poet, but not ranked high along with Whitman. He is, but nevertheless, very popular because his poems are very easy to recite and all that. Okay. H.W. Longfellow, Henry Wordsworth Longfellow. Now, he concentrates on people who seem to be outside of life. Okay? He writes about people who are different, who are set apart by pride or egotism or innocence or guilt. Please pay careful attention to what we are discussing here. This helps you. Summary anyway you have. Don't worry about the summary. Okay? What is he focusing on? He's focusing on characters who are different from others, sort of set apart. How are they set apart? Pride, egotism, or innocence or guilt. Now, the four major characters in Scarlet Letter, four major characters would be the priest of the colony, Reverend Arthur Dimmesdale, Hester Prynne, who arrives from England, and her husband, whom she thinks is gone, lost, Roger Chillingworth, and then their daughter, Pearl. Okay. Now, these four characters are all alike, each for quite different reasons, seems to be cut off from ordinary humanity. So, for that matter, are the protagonists in many of his tales. His characters are cut off from other characters. Something special about them. Something makes them different. It could be their pride, egotism, guilt, or innocence. In the minister's black veil, who is a minister? Anyone can answer this question. Who is a minister? Hello. Yeah, can you hear me? Take a guess. Who is a minister? Who is a minister? Nobody wants to answer that question.
Sir, a person who manages or administers any particular given task, sir.
Is a minister. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. A minister is a priest. A minister is an ordained minister. An ordained priest or by the church is called a minister. Okay. So, yeah, that's why in a visa category, there is an R visa, right? Some of you are familiar with that. There are many visas, right? You have F visa for students, J visa for cultural exchange scholars, and H1B visa. And then there is also R visa. Okay. Now this visa given by the American government is for the ministers. Doesn't mean the political ministers. Okay. Right. Minister means somebody who is a man of God. Okay. If you are a priest, you are a minister. So ministry means the act of preaching is called ministry. So what is your son doing? If somebody says he's in the ministry, doesn't mean he's in the Ministry of External Affairs or the ministry is service actually. Minister means servant. Have you got the idea? Christ tells his disciples when he washes their feet that you ought to be like servants. You ought to be the ministers, not people of power and position, but people who serve. That's why they are called servants of God. A minister is a servant. A minister is a servant. Got the idea now? Okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes,
So
sir.
a minister means servant. So here it's a servant of God. The minister's black veil refers to the minister, the black veil that the minister, that is the man of God, the preacher, was wearing. minister's black veil. Now, the character here is Parson. Parson means pastor. Parson Hooper's obsession with guilt that severs him, that separates him from the human community. Viewing the world through the veil of his own guilt, he thinks he sees a black veil on every face around him. We were talking about how Hawthorne focuses on unique characters. In this particular story, Parson Hooper, Reverend Hooper, who is the minister of the congregation, who is the pastor to the congregation, he is wearing a black veil because he is overcome by guilt. And he sees everything through this black veil and sees the black veil on all others, a dark secret that all have, all try to cover. Okay? Covering one's guilt from God. That's so. Remember Paradise Lost book 1, if you remember last year, when God comes down to the Garden of Eden to commune with Adam and Eve. He asks, Adam, Adam, where art thou? Where are you? Adam is no longer present. He cannot meet God. He says, God, we are hiding. We are hiding behind the bushes because we are naked. Who told you that thou art naked? Now the point here is, man is overcome by shame and guilt. Right? Dear friends, am I making sense?
Yes, sir. Yes,
now,
sir.
The guilt is something that prevents you. Okay? So now, Parson Hooper's guilt, what is he guilty of? We don't know. What has he done? We don't know. But it's a very beautiful story because the effect of the black veil, this very strange, very eccentric behavior of the parson, it has effects on his congregation. Now, these are important works, okay? The Fanshawe, A Tale, Twice Told Tales, very popular. The Blithedale Romance, House of Seven Gables. Now, since you don't have a Scarlet Letter in your syllabus, Scarlet Letter is about the relationship between the preacher, Arthur Dimmesdale, and Hester Prynne, and then the daughter who is born called Pearl, and arrival of the husband Chillingworth, and Chillingworth is overcome by, revenge, and Hester and Arthur Dimmesdale's own remorse because he has committed a sin. He has committed sin of adultery because Hester is married to Chillingworth. So it's a very powerful novel if you can read it on your own. Okay, well, now, so the black veil continues the allegorical tradition of literature where something stands for something else. What does the black veil stand for? It stands for something else. Well, now the minister's black veil, a parable. It is called a parable. What is a parable? A parable is a narrative which is told to drive home a spiritual truth. We were referring to Christ's parables, the parable of prodigal son, the parable of the lost and found sheep, the parable of the vineyard, the good Samaritan, okay, the parable of the talents, the three servants being given different responsibilities, and the master, that is God, when he comes back, asks for accounts. So these are all parables. Parables tell a story. A fable involves also is a story with a moral, but it involves animals like Panchatantra, okay, Aesop's fables, where a story is narrated with a view to drive home a moral. Now, this is basically based on a real character, real person, Reverend Joseph Moody of York in Maine. Maine is New England. Now, the setting of the story is Milford congregation. Now, Hooper is a very good preacher and he's in his 30s. He's a bachelor, but he's affianced. He is engaged to Elizabeth, who would marry him. One fine day, what happens is Hooper is coming with now the sexton is ready, waiting for the parson to emerge from the parsonage. Parsonage means the house where the priest lives within the church is called parsonage. So all the eyes are on the door of the parsonage, and Hooper emerges, and wonder of wonders, he is wearing a black veil. This black veil, first they think it's something that he's wearing to say something about in the sermon, something related to the sermon that he's going to preach that day. But he doesn't take it off. Wherever he goes, whether, it's a wedding, it's a funeral, it's a baptism, anything that he is a part of, where he officiates, he doesn't part with his veil. Now that becomes very, very difficult for the congregation. Naturally, tongues talk. Now, people wag, tongues begin to wag. People say that maybe our good pastor has done something terribly wrong. He's overcome by guilt, or is something evil, something devilish. So there are number of responses to the pastor wearing the black veil. Why he wears it, nobody knows. But even when he becomes old, even when his fiancée asks him to remove the veil, he says, no, it cannot be. And then he becomes old, and on his deathbed, another priest asks him, why don't you remove the veil? You are going to meet your maker now. So, but even then, he doesn't. And he says, well, none of you can accuse me of wearing a veil, because all of you wear a veil. All of you are hiding something. Okay. Now, this is an amazing story, which can be read at a number of levels. Okay. Now, can somebody read this beginning of the story?
Sir, can I read, sir?
Yeah, go ahead.
The sexton stood in the porch of Milford Meeting House, pulling busily at the bell rope. The old people of the village came stooping along the street. Children with bright faces stripped merrily beside their parents, or mimicked a graver gait in the conscious dignity of their Sunday clothes. Spruce bachelors looked sidelong at the pretty maidens and fancied that the Sabbath sunshine made them prettier than on weekdays. When the throng had mostly streamed into the porch, the sexton began began to toll the bell, keeping his eyes on the Reverend Mr. Hooper's door. The first glimpse of the clergyman's figure was a signal for the bell to cease its summons. But what has good Parson Hooper got upon his face? Cried the sexton in astonishment.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, this is how the story begins. It's a very interesting way to tell a story. Now, see, it does so many things. Look at this paragraph that Hawthorne has written. It, in a very few lines, the colonies, the Milford congregation, the many aspects of this particular town are revealed. And, people going to the Sabbath day, that is a church on Sunday. Sabbath in the Christians on Sunday. Sabbath falls for the Jews, okay, on the preceding day. And in some cultures, it's Friday. So Sabbath is the day of rest, actually. Okay, Sabbath refers to the day of rest. So now the Milford congregation and the sexton. Now, one question for you. How does the story begin? What activity begins the story? The story begins with?
Wearing a veil.
Pardon? Yeah. Who
The
said?
person wearing a veil. The person
No.
wearing a veil comes.
No, it doesn't begin that way. Look at the first sentence. The sexton stood in the porch of Milford meeting house, pulling busily at the bell rope. You all know that the bells are rung, calling the people for prayer, for worship. Okay, the bell signifies it is time. Okay, the ringing of the bell. Earlier, there used to be wonderful belfries, but now only few of the churches in Hyderabad have those bells. Now the ringing of the bell is heard for a lot of long distances. They all came and they were all bright. Children were bright, and then young bachelors were interested in the pretty maidens. And so a lot of things are happening here. People, it's an occasion for people to come together. At which point of time the sexton is looking anxiously towards the door of the parsonage for Reverend Hooper to emerge. So that would signal that he would stop ringing the bell. But when the sexton looked at the door, he exclaimed, "But what has good Parson Hooper got upon his face? My dear, what is Reverend Hooper wearing on his face?" This is the beginning of the story. Now, what it means, why is he wearing, and even the sermon that he delivered, sermon is the religious discourse that is given in a church. The sermon he delivered was also dark, okay? And well, but there was something either in the sentiment of the discourse itself or in the imagination of the auditors, which made it greatly the most powerful effort that they had ever heard from the pastor's lips. It was tinged rather more darkly than usual with the gentle gloom of Mr. Hooper's temperament. The subject had reference to secret sin. What was the subject of the sermon that Hooper gave? Secret sin. And those sad mysteries which we hide from our nearest and dearest and would fain conceal from our own consciousness, even forgetting that the omniscient can detect them. A subtle power was breathed into his words. Each member of the congregation, the most innocent girl and the more man of hardened breast, felt as if the preacher had crept upon them behind his awful veil and discovered their hoarded iniquity of deed or thought. A wonderful expression, the hoarded iniquity of deed or thought. What usually hoard? What is hoarding? Now, during the time of pandemic, people were hoarding. When they say that something might not be available, so they go and buy everything. Okay, though they don't need, they buy a lot of things. That is called hoarding. Now, what is this hoard of iniquity? Hoarded iniquity of deed and thought. Meaning, the sermon was about secret sin and how people hide their sins from others, from them, their own selves, pretending that the omniscient, that is, omniscient means all-knowing. Omniscient cannot detect. Nothing is hidden before God. And when they heard even a small girl to a hardened man, they felt as though the preacher has crept behind them and discovers their iniquity, hoarded iniquity of deed and thought. Meaning, you must have done something, or you must have thought of something, both deed and word or deed. This is the beautiful, sermon that he gives. Now, this creates a response. Obviously, people are afraid of him. They are in awe. What is awe? A feeling of respect mixed with, light fear. That is called awe, awesome, awe-inspiring. Fear, mystery, scandal, insanity, eccentricity. Is the preacher insane? Is he mad? Is eccentric? And is there something scandalous? Obviously, he might have done something. And fear, why is he doing this? And then a kind of a reverence also. And even his old friend who invites him every Sunday, Squire Saunders, avoids him. And then when his betrothed Elizabeth asks him about the veil, he says, there is an hour to come when all of us shall cast aside our veils. Take it no amiss, beloved friend, if I wear this piece of crape till then. Know then, this veil is a type and a symbol, and I'm bound to wear it even in light and darkness. So with my familiar friends, no mortal eye will see it withdrawn. This dismal shade must separate me from the world. Even you, Elizabeth, can never come behind it. Do not leave me in this miserable obscurity forever. Lift the veil but once and look me in the face, she said. Never, it cannot be, replied Mr. Hooper. Then farewell, said Elizabeth. Now Elizabeth says, Khudafis, okay? She says, I'm leaving you. May God protect you, okay? Farewell. I am no longer going to be with you, because he refuses to remove the veil even with his beloved, with his betrothed. Now, over a period of time, people begin to make fun of him. Some see in him a friend, okay, who will sympathize with him for their own dark secrets. Dying sinners, they cry loud for Mr. Hooper. People came from far and wide just to see this man. He became a tourist attraction. Now, he acquired a name throughout New England churches, and they called him Father Hooper. Now, the last days of the minister, Reverend Mr. Clark of Westbury, and when he asks him to take away the veil, he says, never on earth, never. Dark old man, exclaimed the affrighted minister, with what horrible crime upon your soul are you now passing to the judgment? Old man, you are dying. And why don't you remove the veil? Because are you going to meet your maker? Are you going to your judgment with this dark veil? Now, he says, why do you tremble at me alone? He says, tremble also at each other. You are worried that I'm wearing a veil, but look around. All of you are wearing a veil. When the friend shows his innermost heart to his friend, the lover to his best beloved, when man does not vainly shrink from the eye of his creator, loathsomely treasuring up the secret of his sin, then deem me a monster. When you do these things, then call me a monster. When you can show your innermost heart to your friend, can you do that? And can a lover show his innermost or her innermost heart to his or her lover? Okay? Or when man does not shrink from the eye of God, okay, then you call me a monster. For the symbol beneath which I have lived and died, I look around me and lo, on every visage, a black veil. Now he sees that everyone is, hiding something or the other. And he has merely put on a veil. He has merely put on an external, symbol for what he feels within. Okay. So now, yeah. And Cooper's, could be a saintly figure, and like calling his congregation to repent like the Old Testament prophet, like Ezekiel, okay, and Jeremiah, okay, and in some cases Isaiah. On another view, he's a victim of a monomaniac obsession. You can see him as a saint, you can see him as a monomaniac. Monomaniac means he has an obsession. And one of Hawthorne's unpardonable symbols, sinners, or even a type of antichrist. So there are many possibilities in which you can read this story, okay? Yeah, I'll leave out this critical comment of prosopopoeia, okay? No need of that and all, okay? I'll stop here. Yeah, and right, I did what I could to give you a comprehensive understanding of American literature. Studying American literature without an American map is going to be confusing. So that's why I showed maps. They will stick in your mind, I think, that you will know what are the northern colonies, what are the southern colonies, what are the 13 colonies, and what is the eastern coast and the western coast and frontier. And yeah, I think, well, that's it. And there are a number of resources I already told about: sparknotes.com, yorknotes.com, and cliffnotes.com. Any number of websites which give you guides, okay, help you to understand the various components of the syllabus, right? And this is my last session with you. So I wish you all the best in your examinations, and yeah, stay safe and God bless, right? Okay. See you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.